Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on the Blind Ambitions podcast. I have a very good friend of mine I've been super excited to bring onto the show, Bennett Maxwell, who is the chairman. Is that correct?
Yeah, whatever that is, that's what
Chair,
I am.
the chairman of Dirty Dough, an incredible entrepreneur story that I'm so excited to share with my viewers. Bennett's been an incredible friend to me, and honestly, over the past 2 or 3 years, is giving me the most valuable connects and nudges. He's just an extremely friendly, knowledgeable, super humble, one of my favorite human beings. Thank you for joining me today,
Thanks,
Bennett.
Abby. Appreciate that.
Yeah, so this is, as you can probably imagine, much of my audience is in the solar industry. And so, shout out to those who are listening here from solar. That is actually, I don't know if it's where you got your start, probably not, but that's where our
Yep.
paths crossed. Tell me about your start in solar.
2019, I was doing Vivint before that,
Oh, wow.
and I did Pest before that, and I
Whoa.
did a little bit of satellite. I did everything pretty much for 1 year, and I had the work to learn, not to earn mentality. And I figured you could learn, like if somebody works for me, it's I don't like to compare it like that, but it's true. Like if somebody works for me, I'm probably going to teach them 80% of what I have to teach them within the first few months, maybe a year. And then if you keep working with me for 5 years, you're going to learn a lot less as far as personal development skill, how other people manage compared to working for a different company.
Hmm.
So that was kind of I was like, I made good money in pest, but I switched to satellite because I'm like, I want to learn another product and another leadership. So I just did that for 1 year. And then I did Vivint and then I did solar. But same thing, like Vivint was good. I would go out for a summer and make 200 or 300 grand. And I didn't have to recruit anybody. I was good at it. But same thing, like, but solar's more of a professional sell. So I
Mm.
did a summer when everybody said solar summers didn't exist because it took forever to install. And
Mm-hmm.
it was Bright Planet and they were
Oh,
installing quick. I
shout
mean,
out to
a month
Mikey.
or so.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
they're great.
did that, loved it. And then after a summer, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do like a sales org and we moved some of it online. Have you ever met Brent Attaway, by the way?
Of course.
Okay.
Of
So
course.
me and Brent teamed up and he taught me a ton because I didn't know anything about business. I just knew sales.
He's incredible.
And then we did that just for 18 months. And I think it was in a time that we got very, very lucky because people were buying sales orgs, which I didn't think.
Yeah.
So we had an exit, and then that led me to Dirty Dope. It was quick. I mean, from the first recruit till the time we sold was 18 months. Is all.
Whoa. So you had an exit, you sold your sales org, and
Yep.
that went better than expected. Sounds like.
Yes, the exit did.
That's
During
amazing.
was ups and downs and all the craziness.
You were in though at that time. It kind of felt like anything you threw at the wall stuck a little bit, right? Like I was in it at that
Yeah,
time
yeah.
and I
Oh
felt
yeah, it
like I
was
had the
everything
magic
was on
touch.
fire.
Yeah. That's amazing. So tell me the journey from solar then to cookies.
I heard on a podcast that true wealth is built from buying real estate. And I had a few rental properties and then businesses. And I'm like, I've never even considered buying a business.
Yeah.
So Dirty Dough, I had already invested, but other than like investing, and that was like 2019, I never even installed a store or anything. I invested when it was out of an apartment and he wanted money to buy the store or to build the store. So I invested. And then at the end of 2020, after that store had opened, he said he wanted to sell it
Wow.
because I was like, hey, let's franchise it. I'll be your first franchisee. And he wanted to sell it. And I just listened to the podcast. And I'm like, what the hell? How much are you selling it for? So I ended up buying it. I still had the solar company. I was in San Diego. This was like a single cookie store in Tempe that I'd
Whoa.
visited maybe once. Didn't know how to make a single cookie, but just again, back to the sales, I think I got a good mentality of there's nothing that the top salesperson is doing that I can't learn. So it's like, what are the cookie people doing that I can't learn?
Right.
So I think that mentality made me ignorant enough to jump in.
Delulu.
At
That's
about
that's the
six
young word,
months
right?
of trying to do them both, the opportunity came to exit the solar, so I did, and then just dove full time into Dirty Dough.
Very cool. So the Dirty Dough story about the time you dove full time in. What year was that?
It's 3 years ago, like from this month.
Wow.
Yeah, so 2021.
So you made the move in to cookies. And then at what point did that turn into franchising?
I mean, that was like the vision from the
Mm-hmm.
beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It was December of 2021.
Okay.
So I exited the solar, and that's when I met John Richards, or somebody said, "Hey, he does the startup," and I'm like, "I just sold a company."
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not gonna fly out to Utah and go to the and pay a few grand to do this course. And anyways, he convinced me to do it, and that was the turning point of business for sure, because I learned from like small business how to go from a small business where you own your own job to a scalable business
Love that.
and fundraising and all of that stuff. So and John gave me some good advice because during we got some cash when we sold, but a lot of it was stock. And then there's a salary and then be available, but it was very minimal. And John's like, you have to walk away from all of that. I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's like an hour to a week and I get a salary, it pays all my bills.
Yeah.
I can't pull money from Dirty Dough. And he's like, I'm not going to be your advisor unless you end all of that.
No
So I'm
way.
like, okay, definitely good advice. And same thing. He's like, whether it's salary or I was building some homes too, and I was trying to like, do I finish paying for those or do I invest in a Dirty Dough? And he's like, real estate will give you a 10 or 20% return. If you invest in your business and yourself, like you can get 100x return, 1000x return.
I love it.
So we'll see. I was just doing the math, and as I'm saying that with John, it's been like 3 years since I went full
Uh-huh.
time into it,
Uh-huh.
and 3 years and a few months since I bought it. And the price that I bought it, and because we have a parent company that we partner with, like a management group, and they want to acquire us just next month. Like it's supposed to all go through, which I'll still stay involved in. It's a stock swap and things like that. But the value from when I bought it to when I sold it is over 100x. And
Whoa.
then like I'm glad I didn't, what would I have made in real estate if I would have
Hold
jumped
up.
into those?
That's incredible. Okay, I have more questions, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. That is amazing. I think it's worth a quick pause here to shout out John Richards because you
Yes.
told me, hey, if you're getting into this in my second space as I was launching Radical, you were like, if you're interested in, tech and in raising money, you should definitely go to John Richards' course. It's Startup Academy, right? I'm gonna make sure I'm saying that right.
Ignition.
Thank you. Startup
But now he just
Ignition.
launched Startup Academy, which is an
That's
online
where
course.
I'm
And
mixing it up from. So John was incredible. I don't usually do the courses. I don't get into them. I have friends that create them and they do a wonderful job, but that's just, hasn't really been my style to
mhm,
absorb a lot of it. And that's part of what I love about you. You've been so open to mentorship and clearly it's, helped you
it's paying
crush
off.
it. But his course, his knowledge base is incredible and John's been amazing. So I was grateful that you pointed me on that, but he's just here in Utah County. So, okay. So he gave you the advice. You walked away and franchising just started from
Yeah, we franchised at the end of that year.
okay.
And so he's the one who taught me what an advisory board was. So I was like, okay, I want you,
Yeah.
you're the one teaching it.
Yeah.
And then he brought on our second advisor, which was Steve Hart. He owns the largest property management franchise in the nation. So it's like, okay, cool. He knows franchising, John owns business. And then I'm asking everybody else, like, hey, who else do you know that I could potentially ask to be an advisor? And somebody worked for one of our employees worked for Mrs. Fields, but before that, it was a company called Maui Wowie Smoothies and
Oh,
Coffee.
okay.
And she's like, oh, you can ask Jill. She's been doing this for 40 years. She grew it to 600 something at its peak, sold it. So I asked Jill, and this was, yeah, like November of 2021. And she's like, you don't need me as an advisor. You need me to run this. And I'm like, well, we have no money. I didn't tell her that though. I'm like, I will just go knock doors. Like, I'll go sell another solar
Yeah.
account to
Yeah.
pay for the salary because I think my time is better just making more money for her to run the company because I don't know anything about franchising, right?
Yeah.
So we hired her and yeah, we sold. I mean, right off the get go, who's going to buy a franchise from Bennett Maxwell who just came from solar?
Yeah.
Nobody,
Yeah.
right? But who's going to buy a franchise from someone who's been doing it for 40 years? And then when you're selling franchises for 30 or $40,000, like it's as long as you can sell it and leverage the name, but not just leverage the name, but also, I mean, she was running everything. Um, it really helped us sell franchises. And then, so I guess when me and Marcus met 2 years ago, um,
We got you in the timeline.
it was, yeah, June of 2022 is when we opened up our first franchise. Today we have 65, maybe. We've been
Whoa.
opening, we kind of paused it at the beginning because we
Okay.
did some new partnership, but 2 weeks ago, I think we opened up 3 stores, another one or two last week, another one or two this week.
60,
And it's like every
65.
single, and then we do mobile franchises. We have about 15 of those in operation, and we've done maybe 460 or 70 total that we've sold. So now we have to go
Whoa.
open them.
That is so
But
cool.
that's kind of where we're at right now. And yeah, it's crazy.
That's wild. We were recording some videos for my personal brand, and I was talking about a lesson I learned the hard way, which was keeping your ego out of it,
Hmm.
building a business that's not around you or your ego. And so I just kept hearing that message as you were talking about your journey from A to Z. My question for you is, did you ever feel pressure to be the CEO or to take a different type of a role? Because you obviously you orchestrated this in a beautiful way, but you you did so in a unique way too.
Yes, just from one investor. But
Hmm.
it's like, I don't know if the truth is that I'm not good at it or I just didn't want to do it. I mean, it's like I get that a lot, like, oh, that's, humble or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe was doing it because I was avoiding the pressure and the blame.
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm gonna get somebody else in here. I mean, it is that they know more than you, but I think it is also I didn't want the pressure, so I don't. I think that's
interesting.
probably not a good thing.
Oh, I can
I
relate to
didn't do
that
it
side
for
of it
purely
too.
good
Hmm.
reasons. It was
Hmm.
just like, no, this is way too much. I don't know how to freaking talk to all these franchisees that all own businesses and every one of them
That
knows more
sounds
than you.
super intimidating,
So
seriously.
find somebody else. But yes, it is good to find somebody else because they know more than you. But for me, it was easier because I didn't want all the eyes and the pressure and everything. I like sales. I like kind of the PR side, the social media side,
You're
and that's what I got
fantastic
to
at it.
stick to. So
Good relationship guy. That's your go-to. I love that you know your strength.
yeah, and then try to outsource everything else, I
That's really
guess.
cool. So I think that most people in the state of Utah have heard the term cookie wars, and you're probably tired of hearing the term at this point. But we have to touch on it because I always love to hear people's challenges, their stories that kind of gave them grit, and you
Mhm.
you may have wanted to avoid whatever it was, but you certainly got handed to you a difficult situation with this lawsuit. And I, from where I was sitting, watched this go down and was just so empathetic for your situation. I didn't even know you well, but I went, oh my word, how could he sleep at night with the stress he's got to be under? And I'm sure you didn't know that somebody was worrying about you the way that I was, but you just sailed through it and seemed though it didn't even affect you. I know that that's not the truth, but give me the real story. So I left out the context. Let's go back.
Okay.
So Dirty Dough was sued by Crumbl.
Yes. Before we even had a franchise open, we had one corporate store
Serious? That
open.
was the time? And
Yes.
it erupted into hashtag Cookie Wars,
Yes.
which was hilarious.
So we got sued. Nothing really happened. 6 weeks goes by, and KSL picks it up. So it's like, okay, well, if KSL, because before it's like you read the lawsuit, it's like, okay, this is stupid. It's
Yeah.
still the stomach dropping moment
Yeah.
until you read it and you're like, wait, why is there pictures of like sprinkle cookies next to each
Some
other? Like
nonsense
this
sprinkled
isn't
in.
this
Yeah. Yeah.
doesn't belong in a lawsuit.
Right.
Um, Anyways, 6 weeks later, it was like, okay, this is just gonna be a waste of money, and they're just distracting, and this is a business tactic, whatever. Um, but when somebody else, a news station, like made it public, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna say my side of the story,
Yeah. Good.
and it ended up really working out because Crumbl wouldn't accept an interview, probably because like, even if it was like Good Morning America, or CNBC, they wouldn't. It was just me giving my story, and then they would release it, and then Crumbl would decline to comment. So I got to
So you
control
were
the
the
narrative
underdog,
the entire time,
the noisy
which was
underdog.
great. Yes, the noisy under, and I think that yeah, people like the underdog story, and I also think it was the transparency. Like I
Yeah.
broke down every single aspect of the lawsuit and like why you could verify it was dumb,
Oh, that's
and then
cool.
obviously we did some billboards and professional actors and made fun of it while still touching on the issues, but being lighthearted and I think without being rude.
All right, I got to pause you there. So you're experiencing some growth. You just kicked this off. You took a big risk that your advisor told you to do. And you now have this massive lawsuit. Was it your first time, I'm sure,
Yeah.
being in something like this? And how does that come about with you deciding to poke fun at it through making a marketing effort and making videos about it? Like,
So
where did you get the nerve to do it? I love it.
yeah, it was first we threw up some billboards and it said Dirty Dough coming soon on I-15
Hmm.
in Utah Valley, and that's where Crumbl's been based out of for forever, I
Yeah.
think. And they've never put up a billboard. The next month, it was the same month they did the lawsuit and they just flooded the freeway with billboards.
No way.
And I took a picture and I was like, and I tagged him. I was like, I like your billboards. I wonder where you got the idea from. And then that sparked the let's respond with billboards. So we threw up cookies so good we're being sued and let your taste buds be the judge.
That is so rad.
And anyways, just threw up a bunch of funny billboards and that got a lot of traction. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people saw it,
Yeah.
but I posted on LinkedIn and it got over 1 million views. So, and then it got picked up by 50 some odd news stations, so it's like we had probably tens of millions of views, not from the billboards themselves, but because I posted it and I tagged Crumbl. So I think people are like, oh, that's kind of ballsy. This guy's
It
crazy.
came
Either I'm
across
going to watch him
ballsy.
fail or lose, but
Yeah.
either way, it's going to be interesting. That's going to be public.
So was this you or was somebody nudging you? Like, was this you
Oh, it
going,
was
you know what,
me.
oh my gosh, I love
I
it.
mean, it wasn't me. Like all the creative I didn't come
Yeah,
up
yeah,
with.
yeah.
The marketing company came up with like 20 options, and some of them were really good. But like I remember one was like, time to take the oven mitts off, you know, like. But I'm like, no, I don't want to look like we're fighting. So like I chose the ones that I liked the best. Um, and then somebody reached out about doing the videos, but the same thing, like all the advice I got from everybody else was, no, don't piss them off. And I'm like,
Right.
or what? Like I didn't piss them off, and they're suing me. Can they like sue me twice? So my question
That's
was always, is this illegal?
right.
No, but we would recommend, because I'm like, nope, there's my answer. I'm going with it.
Oh
I
my
don't really
gosh.
care.
I feel
That's just
like
not my personality to
people
back
in
down.
the legal space too, if you get too hung up in getting advice from lawyers, it's probably going to be the shittiest advice you've ever gotten. Truly. Like they're going to keep you from the worst of the worst.
They're not business owners though.
They're not business owners
They're
and
not marketers.
they're
They
not
don't know
marketers.
PR.
No, and at the end of the day, they're really going to go, it's just so much by the book that everything that you've done as an entrepreneur to get you to where you're at in this crappy situation,
Mhm.
like that is not the way out by following what they tell you. So I love that you did that. I was in that space when I'm still dealing with legal stuff from business, but when I was in that space where I kind of just shrunk and went, I don't know, I can't say anything. I can't get on a podcast. I
Yeah.
can't say whatever it is. I'm going to be, sued with tack on all these little lawsuits for defamation, the fear of defamation. And there's a new level of like fearlessness that comes from like, sue me for defamation. Let's do this.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
like I
mean?
don't
Like
give a
once you
fuck.
get through it and you're like burned by that fire, you're like, this is just another nonsense game. One that only lawyers get rich in and everybody else just throws money at something stupid, which is
Yeah.
wild. Your
I
story was so crazy though to watch.
I felt super weird. I mean, I'm 31 now, so this was only 2 years ago. But 29, like you have a franchise attorney and then a litigator and then an IP, and it's like you have all these attorneys, and you're just like, all these guys are way smarter than me. And they are when it comes to law, but they're not at business. None of them have grown a business. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm like asking, like taking business advice. So I'm like, no, no, I just need legal advice from
Right.
you. I'm gonna get business advice
Good
from
on you.
business people. But it was like, I remember like, no, just like doctors knows everything. Now I go to doctor, I'm like, when was the last time you studied? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, what do you, are you, anyways?
The beauty of
And not
questioning
really just
everything and
like,
everyone.
yeah, viewing people with a degree
Grain of salt.
as
Right.
gods, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah. Oh, I love that. So, was there any point during that process that you regretted pressing back the way that you did? Or
No,
maybe went, oh, I took it too far. No?
no,
Oh, I love it.
no, absolutely no.
That's my favorite story. Okay, so where did it end? Because it's come to at least some form of a
Yeah.
resolution, right?
End of last year, we settled and I got dismissed. So
Awesome.
we went, when we got sued, like this was in like May, and we'd sold 60 franchises in the first 6 or 7 months, which was a lot. And then in the next 6 or 7 months, we went from 60 to 290. And most
Whoa.
all of it was PR from the lawsuit, because we made
Whoa.
national news. And then it was like, two cookie giants are fighting. And it's like, okay, now we have two stores. They're at 500, doing 1 billion in revenue, but sure. But it did, like, the public perceived that it was us versus Crumbl for the like who's number one and number two. And it's like Crumbl's number one by far, and we're number 80. You know, like we weren't even in the category, but Crumbl brought us to their level. And we reacted
That
as
is
if we were on their level.
amazing. Oh, that's so cool. So, franchising today. What can you tell my viewers or my audience about, it's still in the door to door knocking? Some of them are in the contracting grind, which
Um,
is not proving so well. What are your lessons learned there making that pivot?
um, the mentality, I mean, it's just, do you know how to learn, right? You learn how to knock doors, you
Right.
learn how to communicate, you learn how to change your pitch based on the objections, and you learn how to close and learn the product. Like just learn business, but it's not just like YouTube business. Find people, find advisors. Again, I had a CEO that's been doing it for 40 years, and an advisor that's same thing. Been doing it for 20 something years, built the largest franchise in the segment. So it's like surround yourself with the right people, whether it's franchising or whether it's baking cookies or whether it's whatever. Like, I just think that that mentality, and I think it's a little, maybe I'm very resistant towards it, because I heard it all the time when I recruited, like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
not a salesperson. I'm like, what does that mean? That
Hmm.
means you haven't learned to communicate,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
who was born selling solar or medical devices? Just like nobody is born being a doctor. Like, you could have a tendency towards it, but at the end of the day, you just learn it. So I think that getting out of that mindset and really just like, I could learn whatever with the right resources, the right people, the right whatever,
That's so cool.
then jump into the next thing. And then you're focusing on your skill set rather than, the money so much. And
Hmm.
then you build up the skills, and then the money tends to follow.
I think of that often, your story, because it's so cool, but it makes me self reflect because my experience up to this point has included no advisors,
Hmm.
zero, very minimal coaching or even people in my life. I've just never really brought people in. I've never asked the advice of people. And I don't think it comes from me from this place of like, I've got to do it on my own. A lot of it, as silly as it is just like I've been the person providing for everybody in my life or the strong person or the one that figures it out. And I don't know that I ever learned that lesson of like, hey, help me out
Hmm.
here. And asking for something is just like, I don't know, like being waterboarded to have to ask someone for something. And I think you might be the first person. I don't remember how you and I connected, but I told you that I was very, very intrigued in franchising and very much still am. And and someone said connected me to you, and we realized we had this connect because I think you know kind of crossed paths and knew the kind of the Empire days and the Empire story. And you were so nice, and you're just dumping this information. I'm kind of writing it as quickly as I can and giving me contacts. And I got off that phone call and went, why haven't I done this anytime sooner? And how many other ways am I just completely in my own way because it is so stupid?
Yeah.
And so anyway, you were inspiring for me, but I don't know why I am the way that I am. I'm sure that I'm not the only one. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are like that,
I
but
do feel like, yeah, I do feel like most people are like that. Um, I sold Cutco knives and it's all referral based, like high pressure referral
oh,
based, not to
wow.
sell, but it's go tell grandma that it's $15 whether you present or you make, but you know you make commission whatever one's higher, but you just call whoever and say, hey, it's only 15 bucks. I'm saving up money. Just listen to me, you know? And then after it's, well, how do you get your next appointment? Because you only have so many immediate contacts. Then it's, okay, what I'd like you to do to help me, again, they no pressure on them. They don't have to buy anything, but they do have to listen to me, come up with 10 names. And then they come up with the 10 names. And then you say, okay, call the first one. And you're actually with them till they call all 10 names. I got
Wow.
really good at committing people. And then I served a 2-year LDS Mormon mission. And same thing, it's all about committing people and then following up. So it kind of, I guess, beats that out of you. You're like, for me to survive, I need to, if they tell me no, I need to ask them who they know. And now with fundraising, that's like on my
That's it.
spreadsheet when I talk to people, it's like, what check size do you use? What kind of investment vehicle do you usually use? And then one of it is, who else do you know that would be interested in investing? And they're all so nice. You speak with a private equity and they're like, a lot of the bigger ones, they have like a minimum check size of 20 million or something. Like, okay, we're not even close,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
who do you know? And they all know somebody. And then they just keeps feeding. Anyways, I'm good at asking for people.
Small world. So what's your advice for people like me? I mean, I'm thinking through, oh yeah, Cutco knives. I remember
What's the worst that can
applying
happen?
I remember applying for a Cutco knife job. Like I showed up and I lived
Oh,
in Phoenix
really?
at the time and I was like, I would rather die. Not for me. And then you're making me think that maybe all of my time in solar, I should have taken somebody up on like the
So,
30 offers I got. It's like, come knock doors with this. It's like, I could not
yeah.
do it. I couldn't.
Yeah,
I'm a
it's
fraud. I couldn't knock doors. I can sell the people that knock the doors. Like partner, D to
yeah.
D, like B to B is my thing. But yeah, I don't know.
I think it's separating the no, I don't want to help you or buy your product from which is that's what all it is,
Yeah.
right? And then we take it as I don't like you as a person.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh no, my freaking self. I mean, even though I'd knocked doors for all those times, like I'd still get anxiety and I'd still be like, what if I don't sell one today? It's like, no, I sell one every day. But what if I don't? What if I don't set an appointment? It's like, no, but I have forever.
Wow.
But what if I lost my sales ability? Like, your brain just does that. But I do think it comes like the worst that they can happen is they say no. And then it's like, well, who cares? And then you're like, oh, I'm nervous about that. And then I go take mushrooms over the weekend and get over it. I honestly, that honestly helped me a ton. Reframing
There was a lot of
everything
combo in that
and
advice.
forcing your brain to see the same issue from multiple points of view, which
Yeah.
is what happens during psychedelics.
Yeah.
I don't know. And it also kind of strips you of ego and what you think is important. And then it's like, no, nothing's really that important. We just kind of make a big deal of it.
All right. You're making me want to go in a weird direction because you brought up psychedelics. So, how much of that block do you think has to do with my own challenge? Is that I always have to be in control of whatever it is.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
that's
feel
that
like
that's you'll hate psychedelics.
so I've tried them and I've had a
Just
horrific
joking.
experience and so there's a lot of PTSD around it like as a teenager, not like
Uh,
the stuff that like the cool kids do nowadays. It was awful. It was an awful experience. Anyway, I feel like life just keeps giving me these situations where I'm forced to not have any way to be in control of the situation to constantly show me that I'm not actually in control of anything. Like this is all like my own little, way of feeling like I'm safe and like
yeah.
I'm actually in control and I can. It's all nonsense. None of it
Like
is real.
mushroom psilocybin, the big thing if you take enough is people will say that have the ego death. It's
Hmm.
like that sense of control and self and who you are dies.
He just said I'm
But
egotistical. Did you hear that?
I no,
I'm
I'll
just
give you.
kidding.
I have terrible mushroom experiences because I like
Really?
control, and you lose control,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's scary. But here's another way to look at control. Before you act, you always have to have thought,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So then you're like, okay, well, where do my thoughts come from? And do you consciously know what you're going to think before the thought arises consciously? No. So what does that mean? That just means that ideas just pop in your head, and then you have the false illusion that you're choosing to dwell on an idea or choosing to change your mind. But that's just another thought that you didn't control.
Yeah.
Or you can look at it like biology. Do you control your neurons firing? Do you control your hormones?
Right. Your lungs expanding.
No. We're born a baby, and the first time the baby poops its pants, that's like, did he choose to poop? Did she choose to poop? Or is that just like instincts and environment?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then some magical thing comes along. I don't know if they're 2 or if they're 20, but something comes along and it's like, hey, I'm in control here.
Yeah.
Whether it's psychedelics or meditation or just listening to podcasts, intelligent people speak about it, and it's like there is no control. We
Yeah.
are we are a consciousness observing what our body is doing. And once you realize that there's like the illusion of conscious free, I mean, the conscious free will is illusion because you can't control your thoughts. And it's just anybody with 5 minutes can sit down and just like, do I know what I'm going to think before I think it? And the answer is in the question, and it's no. And that is alone proves that there's no control. And then you're like, okay, so now I'm literally just observing something. And the answer is yes. And now it's kind of hard to get over and it takes a little bit, but if you reach there, then it's like, well, what does the world mean? You're still motivated to do all the same things that you're doing because, like, I work and I eat and I work
Hmm.
out because I
Hmm.
feel good,
Hmm.
whether I'm in control or not. Either way, like, me wants to feel good. So you still have the same motivations. But any mistake you've ever made, you could go back and say, okay, here's a time machine. Sorry, I keep hitting this. Here's a time machine. I'm going to rewind to this moment
Right.
in time and I'm going to replay it. Well,
Okay.
if the moment in time is truly the same, that means your wants, your desires, your mood, your hormones, your values, all of that would be the same, and you would have chosen the same thing every single time.
Right.
And so it's like and then it's the same thing going forward because it's just cause and effect. So there's nothing that no mistake that you've ever made that you could have not made it. And then you can look at yourself or others with an infinite amount of grace, sympathy, love, gratitude, whatever, and you could just kind of forgive that. And then also on that, like on the pride side, you don't look down on people because it's like, okay, I am who I am because of the environment that I was placed
Yeah.
along with the genetics. Like, I am no different. My consciousness is no different than the consciousness of somebody living on the street shooting up heroin,
Hmm. Hmm.
other than I got dealt a luckier hand. And that's my belief.
That's fascinating.
It's kind of strange,
I don't think it's strange at
but it's not
all.
that strange because it makes sense. And most people believe in it who have studied it. It's just we don't talk about it.
I think a lot of people do feel the same, like a similar version of it for themselves, right? Like, I know that the experiences that I have had have led me sort of down this path to figure out why is it that I do the things that I do? What am I doing here? What is it that I really want? Even more than that, like what really would make me happy? And
Mm-hmm.
how do I keep finding myself in some of these same loops? And how do you, really get to a space where you can look at yourself in such a radical way in every single thing that you're doing and start to look at the world in and change the meaning of the word karma, right? Like a lot of people love to throw karma around. Like it's you do bad stuff happens to you,
Yep.
but all karma really is just this massive wave of action and reaction and cause and effect. And that's really just when you start to see those patterns play out in the world and you can start to release some of the stress and some of the pressure that comes with it. I obviously have a lot of work to do there. I'm still a little high strung myself, but I think that the biggest reframing that I've been able to do that's benefited me the most has been this concept of every single thing that happens to me, right? How am I able to take what exists in that and benefit myself or my perspective or my situation from it? And uh, I've always loved the idea of taking control of a situation. There's back to my control, right? Because I'm in control of my how I see the situation that happened to me. But I don't like the idea of people purposely disempowering themselves. Like, I'm not
Yep.
in control of this, or I'm the victim. Like, victimization, I think, is rampant. And I think people do it to themselves unknowingly all the time. And I think that we're capable of taking ownership and also controlling our destiny, even though we're not in control. But, right, you can control how you're seeing
Yeah,
things,
yeah. So
and
I mean,
the
cause and
effect it
effect.
has is
You
amazing.
put better inputs in, better
Yeah.
outputs are likely to.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean sit on the couch and smoke weed all day because you're not going to be happy doing that,
Right.
or else you would have already been probably doing that.
Right.
Um, but yes, I do think that, and I also think like the I'm speaking to myself because I also love the control. To get myself to pull myself out of it. I feel if I'm trying to control everything, I'm taking away other people's power
Hmm.
because it's like no, no, no. I'm going to organize everything and everything,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to trust you guys to do it.
Right. Right.
I mean,
Right.
that's what it says, right?
Right.
Because I have to do it. If I
Right.
have to do it, that's because nobody else is as good as me to
Capable.
do it.
Sure.
And I still do it, but I, because nobody's perfect. But every time you could remind yourself a little bit like, oh, I'm going to empower this person. And if it was the wrong decision, it's the only decision I could have made anyway,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. Living with businesses, I think you have to have some crazy, I don't even say this is crazy belief. You have to have something to fall back to. And
Yeah.
for me, that's always like, okay, so I made how many mistakes? And then like, okay, well, even if I had a time machine, I would have made all the mistakes the same. And my life would be the same
Yeah.
because there's nothing else that would have changed anything.
I love that. So, what kicked you off on this journey? Like, for me, it was losing a business and losing my identity that I should never have had wrapped in it to begin with. But what was it for you? I don't hear the big business failure in there. I hear a lot of right place, right time.
Yeah. So I was 28. I sold the business and I wanted $1 million net worth because if you're a millionaire, you don't have problems, right?
Right. Exactly. Easy
And
peasy.
you have to have some passive money and I had some real estate, whatever. As soon as I sold, like I had that and like box checked. And before that, I was at 310 pounds and I thought I had a good relationship with my wife because we didn't fight, and I thought that was the definition of a good relationship. And
Mm.
she's like, "No, we were roommates." Like, looking back, didn't even realize that. But I was always
Wow.
working because I was working for them because time. I mean, you work more and you get more money, and that
Mm-hmm.
gives you more free time. And then with free time, you could then go on a vacation. And on a vacation, what actually is makes me happy on a vacation? Well, it's being with my family.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize I could just be with them every day, right? Like, what an idiot.
I love
So
the
I
way you
hit
put that.
that within 2 weeks. I was working again. I'm like, I'm gonna do
Mm-hmm.
this. And then I watched an Amazon Prime show called Billions. It's like these.
Love
Okay,
billions.
so it's when Bobby Axelrod, he's a
Mm-hmm.
billionaire, and then he hits a
Mm-hmm.
$10 billion net worth,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and he goes and does ayahuasca
Mm-hmm.
because he feels unfulfilled. I'm like,
Right.
okay, this is a million. I know this is a fictional character, but I'm gonna pull some wisdom out of it. I will do this till I get to $10 billion, if ever. And then
Right.
again, so I'm like, I have my target, my sight on the wrong target. And it was like, I want money and I didn't say why. And we're emotional creatures, like, so I think it's comes down to what do you want to feel? Because that's what money does. It makes you feel a certain way, or
Right.
an accomplishment, or a new car, or
Right.
a promotion. What do I want to feel? And then just go after that emotion. And you don't need the promotion, you don't need the job, but you do need coaching and you need to learn how to reframe it. So, anyways, I started seeing a therapist. That was the first thing.
Yeah.
And that was like amazing. And then I'm like, okay, now I need to do like, and I had a business, and then I had a business coach that helped me do like core values and all that and adapt that. And then I started getting into psychedelics. But it was hitting a goal that $1 million before 30, and then just seeing that it felt good for a little bit,
I love
and
that.
then you just kind of go back. And then I'm like, okay, I need to just, I have to redo everything and stop focusing on the goal because one, I'm not in control of the outcome to a very large extent, and two, I'm just gonna see like I hit the goal and you just go for the next one.
Yeah.
So it's all about the here, the now, the presence, the journey.
That's so cool. I think that your business experience is obviously one to be envious of. It's really, really cool. But I think that the perspective that you have, even though it's been some highs, is
Well,
even
yeah,
more
I mean,
valuable. It's incredible.
I don't post when we don't make payroll.
You don't?
I'm not like, hey guys, hey employees, does anybody
Right.
have 100 grand we
Right.
can round up real quick?
So I grew up from absolutely nothing. like we weren't homeless, but we lived in camp trailers parked in front of people's homes. Like the youngest of
Mm,
7 kids, it was a nightmare, but it was so happy and so great. Like let me rephrase it. It was not a nightmare. It was chaos. It was full chaos, and I didn't have anything. And I feel like I'm so grateful for that experience to kind of just keep my head on straight. But fast forward to 2021, I had a really cool experience that I was gifted. A friend of mine in solar brought me along to meet the Walton family,
mhm.
Walmart family. And I go to this event with them and I'm feeling like, I'm like 5 inches tall and I'm just really kind of baffled by this
Yeah.
experience. And I didn't realize until that moment, kind of coming into that room, that I had this underlying belief that money had to equal unhappiness. It had to equal friction between family. And there was this, cute, like mom figure of the Waltons and their kids. And they were all very kind, gentle people talking about, the conversations that I was, listening to, or how they could benefit the town around them and the people around them and how they could continue to build positive things. And it wasn't anything that I think that my brain wanted to tell a story about in my mind. It was so much generosity and so much just warmth from the wealthiest people that most people will never even get a chance to be around. And that was really eye-opening for me because I didn't realize I had that kind of block. And I think there's been some fear for myself around, if I get to this point, then I will really realize that maybe some of the reasons I'm doing these things are not the reasons I think they are, because I'm
Yeah.
chasing something and I don't know where it is when I get to it because it's not going to be there. And so I love that you shared that story. That's honestly, I think, the most valuable story that can come from this.
Well, I think it's I mean, the importance is like you have an issue, and most people issue is I don't have enough money,
Yeah.
right? Um, but that's not the real issue. The issue like is how you're viewing money
Yeah.
and how you think that if you don't have money, what that says about you, or that you should be working on. So what do most people do? Because I did mushrooms this last weekend
Hmm.
with somebody else, and she's going through the same thing. I'm like, yeah, we're like the same. And I'm like, okay, you're 40, you've owned your business for 20 years.
Yeah.
How many times has just working more fixed your issues? Actually, never, right? Like never. It maybe fixes your issues for a little bit, but like, what's the issue? It's how I view money, and I don't want to ask people for more money or
Yeah.
whatever. And
Right.
it's like, okay, well, how much time do you spend on your relationship? And it's not even with money; it's with yourself, and if you feel worthy of the money.
Yeah.
How many hours a week do you spend on that? And the answer is zero, right? It's like, okay, we'll go see a therapist. I don't have money for that. It's like, usually it's $10 for a copay. She's like, oh yeah, I have insurance. I was like, okay, you can start with that. What about like meditation? What about yoga? What about like,
That's
there's
some
a
free
thousand
therapy
different
right
things.
there.
And I feel like I do, the ice baths
Yes.
and the saunas and the red
Hmm.
lights. And it's like,
Hmm.
I guess from an outside, anytime, and I've been on 1,000 podcasts, I'm like, no, nothing's a success to me. It's just happening. Life's just happening. But Dirty Dough has been more stress. I've been more stressed in the last year than I have in my life, probably
I
combined.
believe it.
So it's like, no, I've adapted all these things because I had to make the change. Like I could go from working 40 hours to working 100 again, or I could go from working 40 hours to 25 hours and spend 15 hours on being more comfortable with stress and being able to make better decisions despite stress and learning how to calm my nervous system in the middle of the day, things like that. And so now I'm like under a red light, listening to some different types of meditation with this thing around my vagus nerve, and it's like stimulating me. And I do that every freaking day, you know? Um,
Yeah.
and that was the biggest thing. It's like I found out what my actual problem was on the emotional side, because everything that we're after is to feel a certain way. And then I spent my time, energy, and effort doing that rather than hoping that if I fix my business, I'm going to fix my emotional side. It's like, no, you're not. You will
Right.
momentarily because you're going to relieve the stress. But why are you so freaking stressed if the business today you're surviving, but why is your body going into like a fight or flight? But like today you're not going to die, and likely you never, like the business stress is never going to kill you physically. Like physically you're safe. So it's how do I train my body to see, hey, I know you're reacting a physical response
Right.
from an emotional challenge,
Right.
and I need to help you reframe that so I'm not in freaking cortisol high levels all the freaking time. And anyways, so
I
I
love
know that
it.
was a little tangent, but I do think most of us focus on the wrong thing, and just because society says that's what you should be focused on, just
That's
work more,
perfect. It's
just have more,
perfect.
have more things, be a better person, and you'll be happier. And it's like, I don't know, show me somebody that's worked.
No, I think it's so on point. And as I was prepping to chat with you, even that's really all the questions I had was like, when you get to a certain point, you're not able to out earn or outrun whatever it is that's just sort of living at the core. And I think that your message is so cool. I know that you've always had mental health is such a big part of your personal brand that you've been building. And you take such a unique stretch there. But I'm going to land on one last question as we close up. So, if you were to lose it all tomorrow, all of it, everything that you've built, the places that you've been, and all of these things.
Whatever your question's gonna end, I've already thought about it.
All
So,
right, let's hear it. How do you envision moving forward? What does the future look like for you?
I think about this a lot because it has been so stressful. It's always, I mean, this is supposed to be this is our first month of profitability, and I'm gonna say
Woo,
supposed to because
yeah,
but that's 3 years and raising $5.5 million later
that's a
and
grind.
reporting to investors and bleeding hundreds of thousands of dollars every single month and not knowing when the
Wow.
next investment's going to come.
Mm-hmm.
So I've contemplated this because I've had to like, and I was very scared of it at first. My brain always goes to worst case scenario. I bet again, I'm seeing a therapist. She's like, "Do you even understand bankruptcy?" And I'm like, "No." She's like, "Well, why don't you understand it?" I was like, "Who do I ask?" And like, I'm embarrassed. I'm scared. And anyways, I just go to my
Yeah.
little buddy Chat GTP, and it's like I get to keep my 401k, I get to keep my IRA, I get to keep my home,
Oh,
and I'm like, oh, I like actually I would never not have food. I would never not have a place to stay. And let's say I didn't have that and I did lose that. Then it's like, well, I still have family. Like physically, I'm safe. And what would I do? I don't know, but I don't need to know
yeah.
because there's no way of knowing. So it's
Yeah.
just like I come back to like physically, I'll be safe, and that's what I need. And
Yeah.
physically, my family will be safe. So everything else is just there's no point of I guess trying to control it.
I love it. I love that you use the
I'm a
word
Buddhist
safe
now.
too.
I'm just joking.
I need to spend more time with you. Have always been one of my favorites, but man, this conversation is definitely at the top for me. I think it's incredible value, and I love all of the different things that you are focused on. It sounds like everybody could learn a whole lot. So thank you for having time with me today and for sharing. And I hope to do this again soon.
Thanks, Avi.